Okay, we're with Mark Munro, the Chief Executive of Scottish Athletics, chatting today about the Lindsays National Cross Country. Mark, we're delighted to announce that the entries are at their highest peak for 25 years since men's and women's championships combined. Almost exactly 2,400 entries. How pleased are you with that figure?
Yeah, ecstatic. I think everybody in the sport is delighted to see those numbers. I mean, when you see the number of males and females competing across all age groups, the age range, if you take the youngest in the junior races right through to those competing in the senior races, it's a phenomenal achievement for everyone involved in the sport. And again, our thanks always go to the clubs and the coaches and the athletes themselves for putting themselves forward who wanted to get out there and compete. But I think for me, the National is one of the premier events of the year, the National Cross, and it brings so many clubs. I mean, you've almost got every club represented in amongst those 2,400 athletes. So it's great to see, and visually at the event itself, it's absolutely wonderful.
Well, in fact, I think there's more than 100 Scottish clubs represented this year, which I think again is an increase, because in the past it's been around 70 or 80. So we really are reaching out to all corners of the country. And if we look, doing some sums and looking back at the old records and the figures, we reckon there's been about 600 new competitors added to the national event if you compare between 2011 and 2019. Why do you think that fear of competing is being removed?
I mean, first of all, it's a brilliant event. It's a brilliant course at Calendar Park in Falkirk, and we're very grateful for the support we get from the Leisure Trust, the Community Trust over there as well. But there's been a real buy-in from clubs over the last 5 or 6 years to get athletes out there and get them competing. Again, I spoke about it a few weeks ago as well. You know, competition, it's what you train for, and we've been pushing that out to clubs, and clubs themselves have been promoting that internally. And I think there's just a real camaraderie within the National Cross. When you see the tented village and everyone buying together, everyone's supporting the junior athletes stay and watch the senior athletes. For me, it's one of the best events in the country, and one of the best events of all sports in the country that you'll see.
Now, the men's race and the women's race are both 10k, equal distances. That came in a couple of years ago. And judging by very large entries that we have this year for both of those races, that looks to have been endorsed by the membership. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it certainly has been endorsed by the membership, Peter. When you look at the work that started more than 2 years ago with the Road and Cross Commission, and we should thank them for the work and time they put into this as well, and work alongside the staff and working with clubs and athletes themselves. That decision was taken 2 years ago almost, and last year we saw the equalising of the distances for the first time. And we've had lots of questions: is it the right thing to do? What's going to happen? You're going to lose numbers, but in effect, what's actually happened, or the evidence certainly there, numbers have increased. So I think this year we're seeing there's more than 40 women's entries being added. The men's race is almost 1,000 for the first time, which is absolutely stunning. So yeah, I think it's absolutely justified, and we'll continue to do that while the numbers continue to grow.
Well, just on that women's race, which I think you're right, it's now reaching 400 entries. How exciting do you think it will be to see an Olympian like Steph Twell going in there against Mary McLennan, Morag Miller and others at the front of the field?
Yeah, it's great. Again, if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, with a number of almost all of our top endurance athletes, Olympians and World Championship athletes, European medalists, have competed in the National Cross. And I think the women's race this year is particularly exciting, but I don't think Steph's going to get all her own way. I'm sure Mary and one or two others will be chasing her all the way around there. But for me, just to get that calibre of athlete, or athletes, because there's a number of athletes that have represented Great Britain recently in the Eurocross or in the past, it's going to be a brilliant event.
And of course, it's a very inclusive event. It's male and female. It's under 13 right through to M70, M75, or V70, V75. Paralympian Derek Ray, I think, is running as well. With your knowledge of Scottish sport, Mark, is it possible that this could be the largest national championship event?
I think when you look at actual club members with any governing body for sport in the country, it's certainly the biggest, I would suggest, if not up there with one or two others. What really cuts it for me, and again, a great example of this was last year. I was standing with the Minister for Sport, Aileen Campbell, at the time, and she was asking about the event and the Olympians and the World Championship athletes, and I just turned and said, listen, what you're about to see is not about just Olympians and World Championship athletes. It's great that they're in the event, I said, but what you're going to see is a huge range of ability, and you'll see people of all age ranges. If you take, we've got 11, 12-year-old athletes competing at the weekend, right through to people in their 80s plus, and you know, and a range of standards who just want to take part in the national cross. Everyone wants to do it. It's such a great event and so rewarding. And again, when you run through that tented village and the support from the clubs and the fans, it is really exciting to be there. So for me, that event is about everyone. I think if you took a picture of the national cross country and the tented village and all the athletes on the start line, you would see that this event is absolutely for everyone.